Welcome and good afternoon, everyone. We're really thrilled to have so many of you here this afternoon for our 10th FairTalk on dignity in humanitarian photography and videography. My name's Nadine, and I'm a visual anthropologist and a member of the Fairpicture sales and marketing team. But before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land where Fairpicture's business is conducted in Australia. We honour their continuing connection to land, water, community and the social justice movement, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So just a quick housekeeping note. For those who are unable to attend today, we are recording this session and we will upload that to our YouTube channel just to increase access to the session. If you don't feel comfortable with this, but you'd like to participate, please just keep your camera off, and any questions that you'd like to ask, you can do that in the chat box. So the agenda for today, the power of visual storytelling is more important than ever with humanitarian organisations using it to shed light on social, economic and environmental issues, as well as to highlight project successes with the goal of sparking empathy and mobilising support of different kinds, human resources and financial. So for today's session on dignity in humanitarian photography and videography, we'll start by having a quick round of introductions from our panelists, followed by a couple of rounds of questions of the panelists. And this will allow us to delve deeper into what it means to uphold dignity in humanitarian photography and videography from different perspectives. We'll then open up the floor for a general discussion, and there'll be space for you to ask questions and receive answers. So we really welcome your thoughts and input, and we hope that you'll find the information and the resources or tools shared really useful to you in your work as you create your own impactful narratives that respect the dignity of the protagonist. So over to Savannah. Can you please introduce yourself and tell the participants in a few words why it's important to talk about dignity in humanitarian photography and videography?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me as part of this panel today. Excuse me. My name is, as you've said, Nadine, Savannah Dodd. I am the founder and director of the Photography Ethics Center, which is a social enterprise organization based in Northern Ireland. And I think it's really important to have conversations like this about, having spaces like this to sort of unpack different issues or concerns or topics when it comes to ethics in visual media, whatever the topic may be. So I really welcome the opportunity today to really unpack dignity in humanitarian photography and videography. So yeah, hopefully it will be really helpful for us all to sort of hone our understanding a little bit better of what an ethical practice can look like when we make, publish and consume images. Thank you.
Lovely. Hasan, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Hello guys, thank you Nadine and Savannah, and also I'm glad to share some of my experience from Syria. For other people here, hello, it's Hasan Belal, a photographer from Syria. Start working in the domain from 2012 with a special interest in photojournalism. I already follow the visual anthropology approach, which enables me, let's say, to understand the place here where I work and the identity of the people. I also have, I'm sorry. Also, I have an interest in the documentary photography, and I had the chance to visit Switzerland as an artist in residence to make a project about the migrants last year and the difficulties faced by them during their daily life. It's about 3 different nationalities: Ukraine, Afghanistan and Syrian people. So yeah, also I'm happy to share some of the examples during the work in the field, especially the humanitarian field, focus on the dignity and how we can maintain it through our work. So I'm happy to be here today, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Hasan. Jörg, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, thank you, Nadine, inviting me for this panel too. And a huge thank you to the great audience we have there here tonight. I am Jörg Arnold, and I am one of the co-founders of Fairpicture. And why do I think it is particularly important to talk about dignity when it comes to fundraising in humanitarian visual communication? I have more than 20 years of experience in fundraising for development organizations, in development for development projects, and in humanitarian aid. And I think in almost all humanitarian crises I experienced as a fundraiser, the urgency is very high and the communication is very hectic, and the individual interests of the people affected very often become secondary in this moment. And this, despite the fact that those persons, families, communities are almost never as vulnerable and personally lost as they are in such a situation. And as fundraisers, I think we have a very special responsibility not to violate the dignity of those people and not to prioritize advertising benefits over the individual's rights. But it is not a simple thing, and I think we can only overcome the complexity of this issue with constant dialogue between all stakeholders. And so I'm very happy that we have this Fair Talk tonight.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful. So Savannah, I'll direct the first question at you just to open up the panel discussion. You're working every day in this space with your organization, the Photography Ethics Center. Generally, when we talk about the dignity of a person, there are very different philosophical and ethical concepts. How do you define dignity?
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great question to start on. Because I think that dignity can be quite a slippery term sometimes. I think we hear about dignity a lot, but we don't maybe always know exactly what it is that we're talking about when we're talking about dignity. But of course, it's a really important concept. It's in Article 1. It's enshrined as a human right in Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I think when we talk about dignity at the Photography Ethics Center, what we're really talking about is sort of the intrinsic value of each human being, right? The value of a person as an individual. It's not something that is earned or bestowed. It's something which is just innate in your birthright as a person, right? Just this concept of dignity. But sometimes I think that, especially when we're looking at visual media, sometimes it's more effective to think about what does dignity look like, rather than what does it mean as a concept, because I think it can stay quite abstract as a concept. So I like to think a lot about, when we're looking at images, what does dignity look like to us? And I think we all maybe have our own ideas about what that can look like in a photograph or a film. I think, at risk of sort of going into too much of the content for the workshop next week, but I think one of the main things to think about is really, is the person being represented as an individual? And I think that's a really great starting point for thinking about dignity, is that sort of intrinsic value of the person. Is that coming through as an individual within that image? I hope that doesn't stray too far from your question there.
No, that's great. Thank you. Hasan, I'll move to you now. So you're based in Damascus in Syria,
Yeah.
and you deal with the really challenging work environment daily. Can you share a little bit about your personal journey as a visual creator in Syria, and how that's shaped your approach to humanitarian photography, and particularly in this conflict/post-conflict setting that you're working in?
I will start with like on 2012. I was in my hometown called Tartus. It's a small city. This is my first, let's say, link to photography through one of the local NGOs who work under UNICEF support. So I started from there, documenting project or program the humanitarian programs like WASH or PSS or livelihood things. So I spent 2 years with them, and then UNICEF, as one of the supporters for this local NGO, asked me to, let's say, make a test with them. So I did it as well and started doing photography with them. So here, this is like my first link with the photography, and then let's say I learned something about improving the communication skills, especially with this case, if we are talking about the humanitarian way of work. After that, if we are talking about the journey, uh, as like a person who live in a small city, I have to, let's say, make a level up or step up in my career. So I submitted for NRC, it's Norwegian Refugee Council in Damascus, in the capital. And I got the position in photography also. So here I had a chance to, let's say, to get the access to Eastern Ghouta. Eastern Ghouta in the rural of Damascus, one of the dangerous places in the world during 2017. And here we have to talk about the authorization in Syria. It's not easy to, let's say, take your camera and go down the street, take photos or make stories, because you have to be authorized from one of the agencies, media agencies who work with the embassy. So for me, I'm a freelancer or the street photographer, so I cannot do it. So NRC get me this cover, let's say, and get the access. And I made during the field visits, I did my work, but also personally, I made a story about the transportation there, especially after 4 years of siege. The war in Syria. So I submitted through it, and I got a grant from Thomson Reuters Foundation. So after that, let's say I started considering myself as a photojournalist. Start working with different agencies here in Syria. Yeah, that's it. If we're talking about the journey.
That's great. So you mentioned just a bit earlier that you were working on a project to document migration experiences or refugee experiences. So through your work, you must see quite a lot of suffering of people being forced to move from their homes or their communities with very little economic and social resources. So how do you in your work uphold or ensure that you uphold the dignity of those you photograph in these quite difficult life situations?
Okay. Here, in my opinion, if we are talking about the dignity, we have two ways. Let's say if we are talking about the work with UNICEF or NRC or any INGOs in Syria, the protagonists or the beneficiaries, they already got the help, the aid from this agency. So personally, I am more than welcome to take photos, to make stories, blah, blah, blah. But even that, for me, I have to do some small stuff before start working. Like I have to introduce myself as well, what I will do today, what I will do with these materials after that. First of all, I have to ask for permissions simply. Also, if we are talking about Syria specifically, the majority here is conservative society or backgrounds. So you are, as a photographer, you have to respect their traditions. If we are facing, let's say, people who forced to leave their home and living in the tents, it's not easy for me because I'm also Syrian, but I'm just lucky to not lose my home. So the tent for them, it's a house, so it has to be some privacy. So for me, this is kind of small things to do it before working. You can do your work and let's say maintain the dignity kind of. Actually, also, it's like another way, if we are talking about the news, let's say here, I will not like appear like I'm the perfect guy who's saving dignity. Of course, I made a lot of mistakes actually. But also there is like a way. For example, in the last crisis, the earthquake devastation in Syria, before actually in heck, I was thinking before I went to the place where were affected by the earthquake. I was thinking, okay, I have to cover this big event, but I really want to maintain the dignity because, Syrian people, they already faced the war for 13 years. After that, they are facing the economic situation in addition to the earthquake, so it's too big. So I want to focus on, let's say, symbols, photos, not like the bloody photos or something like that. So I simply found a picture. Here I want to share a screen if I can, or I just want to. So I found like a photo, include like family members in 19s. So I was like, okay, this will explain a lot of things because the background is about like a damaged house by the earthquake. So I took it and I thought like I will save the dignity in this kind of shots. After I share it, I was surprising about the threatened. I'm sorry. A lot of people threaten me and know how you can share this kind of photos. You are not authorized, blah, blah, blah. So simply the members in the photo in 19s, they were not covered by head. And now after the nowadays, they are. So this is kind of missing dignity actually I faced, but I learned a lot about this. I will share the photo with you maybe on the chat. But also, if we are talking about the dignity, مثلاً, for example, there are a lot of people dead in the earthquake, unfortunately. So a lot of graveyard, you can see people digging. And so here, if we are talking visually or in the media, it's a powerful moment. But also you have to maintain the dignity through the work. So maybe we have like some technical solution, let's say. Yeah, and as a photographer, you can take photos from behind, you can take photos hidden faces, you can, and also from the experience, you can, let's say, feel the protagonist. Is he like ready for taking picture or not? Can I ask him or not, or her? So you can feel it, but here I want to share something that I learned from working with UNICEF. In this kind of cases, especially the crisis, if we are talking about like children, let's say, you can take a powerful photo of like dead body in the rubbles, blah, blah, blah. But also you can take photos for the hands, just if we are talking about children, you can take photo for the milk bottle, let's say. So here you can do the work, powerful photos, okay, but you can just take a kind of maintaining some dignity. So this is if we are talking about technical solution that I faced. But yeah, this,
That's great. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Jörg, I'm going to move to this next question. So you've been working as a fundraising professional for more than 20 years. And it's often said that showing desperation or victimization raises more money for organizations. What are your thoughts on this statement?
Yes, well, based on my experience as a fundraiser, I'm not sure whether this hypothesis is really true or not. It is hard to find reliable studies that prove this. And but anyway, you certainly have to differentiate between different scenarios in humanitarian aid or humanitarian fundraising. If you're in if there is a humanitarian disaster that is present in the media, we do not need these images in fundraising. So they are already present in the media, and good fundraising utilizes this media presence and picks up, so to say, the willingness to donate. But if it is how we call it, some kind of forgotten humanitarian disaster, the case is certainly different. Then, unfortunately, showing desperation or victimization can be useful, or is even necessary to raise donor attention and to raise more money, at least in the short term. And this is evident because such narratives tend to evoke strong emotional responses from potential donors, compelling them to take action and to make a donation. But however, while this approach may lead to an initial surge in donation, it raises not only several ethical concerns by, for example, objectifying the individuals affected, exploiting their suffering, taking too little account of the context to perpetuate stereotypes. The use of such fundraising approach may also not be sustainable and conducive to long-term support itself. So, and this for different reasons. There is the risk of donor fatigue. If donors are constantly exposed to images of suffering, that can lead to this donor fatigue, where potential donors become desensitized, so to say, or overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of need. And this may result in decreased willingness to engage or to contribute over time. And then I think which is also important is that the risk of decrease of donor loyalty. It is the basis for the commitment of our most important donors who support us regularly is their trust in our work. However, trust is not built through sensational images, but through a narrative that also shows the long-term impact of our work and expresses the people affected, not as striking objects, but as emotional counterparts. And I think we have got to invest in alternative approaches, in approaches that emphasize positive storytelling, resilience, and empowerment, and approaches that highlight the strength and resilience of affected communities. That can inspire hope and also encourage, from a fundraising point of view, encourage sustained engagement and support from donors. And so I think in summary, while images of despair, victimization can initially bring in more money for organization, it's important to balance the need to fundraise with ethical considerations, with the discussion of what dignity is, as Savannah mentioned it, and a long-term approach in order to achieve also long-term support from the donors. So images of despair, I don't know whether in the long-term view is really functional in fundraising.
Thank you so much for that, Jörg. Savannah, I'll direct another question to you. So consent and fair representation are extremely important in humanitarian communications, and it's something that Fairpicture, really focuses on. How do you think that photographers and videographers can ensure diverse voices and stories, that they're represented accurately and respectfully in their work?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think there's quite a lot to unpack that we could unpack, you know, in that question, ideas of consent and representation and diversity and fairness, right? But I think that what a lot of those things boil down to actually is time. I think that that's one way that actually several of those things can be addressed in a really effective way is spending more time. So spending more time to speak with the people that you're photographing to make sure that they understand, you know, as Hasan described, informed consent, you know, knowing where it's going, knowing that they don't have to say yes, right? That they have the option to say no. Spending time to make sure that they are comfortable, that they're willing, that it's, you know, it's a collaborative process, maybe. I think time can also come into ideas of fair representation and accurate storytelling, right? Because if we just drop in for an afternoon, it's going to be very hard to get a full picture of the context to really understand what's the important thing to say, what's important to this community, what are the stories that need to be told. And also how, you know, you need that time to look around and stop looking just at the thing and look around it to find other stories that need to be told as well. So I think time is a really good way at sort of getting at a lot of those things. And I think that's an important consideration for image makers, but it's also really important consideration for commissioners or photo editors or the people who are hiring the storytellers to make sure that they are giving and accounting for with pay, you know, the right amount of time or enough time for them to be able to do really good ethical storytelling. And I think another angle to this, right, of course, is thinking about who's telling the story. You know, if you're working with an image maker that's based in the community, it's also going to take them less time to get a handle on what the stories are that need to be told, what the context is, to understanding, again, as Hasan mentioned, you know, the cultural implications, the political context, the historical context that you're working in. And again, you know, when we're thinking about who is telling these stories, we have to remember that the positionality of the image maker is going to inevitably shape the stories that they're telling. So if we're thinking about wanting to have diverse voices and a diversity of experiences and stories that are represented, we need that diversity among the storytellers.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right, we've got a few minutes before we go into the Q&A and open discussion. I might ask another quick question. Hasan, you've mentioned like some of the challenges that you face in the field. I've got a question specific to that. So sometimes requests from a client may not be culturally or socially appropriate for your context. You know, perhaps when beneficiaries wish to remain anonymous, or they don't want to be portrayed as sort of these hapless victims that, you know, have suffered in the war, for example, or as refugees. You know, how do you navigate some of these issues? And if you have, you know, a few examples of strategies that work for you.
To be honest, I didn't face like if we're talking about a client and visual creator, because actually they already respect the traditions here, and they already make, like Savannah mentioned about the consent, and you don't have to say yes, you can say no if you want to use like nicknames or something like that, hidden faces, blah blah blah. So all of this is good. But if we're talking about the client requests, you know, for example, the project, or let's say the fundraise campaign that I had to do here in Syria, includes some different location, let's say. If we're talking about a case indoors, like their daily life, a family daily life or something. So we have indoors location, we have maybe also like the work field or something. But for me, all of them is let's say are staged photos. So it's important to doing some street photos. So in the TOR, let's say, they already mentioned, and I have to make stories about the daily life. So daily life, you have to get to the streets, see the action, the real action actually. So here, yeah, we faced a lot of difficulties due to the authorization. And the client asked about this, but we are on the field and we already know that we are not able to do it because we don't have the authorization letter. So this is, yeah, kind of one of the difficulties. Uh, for me, yeah, that's it about this question.
Thank you. That's
This is what
great.
I remember. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Jörg, you've got about 1.5 minutes. I want to ask you, how can organizations leverage visual storytelling in humanitarian crisis, not only for immediate fundraising needs, but also for building long-term support and engagement?
Yes, there is a simple truism in fundraising that maintaining a donor is cheaper than acquiring a new one. And this is also the reason why this is so important to develop strategies that aim to provide long-term support. And I think every organization must, for me, that's most important, must demonstrate its relevance, which makes it a serious player in the eyes of donors. And here too plays the visual storytelling a major role in achieving success. And it means to invest. That is what you said, Savannah. We have got to invest in compelling content. We have got to invest in high quality visual content, to use authentic storytelling, to connect with audiences emotionally and inspire empathy. And that takes time. That takes time again. We have got to really to invest in our visual content. Then a second thing, which is very important, that you, Hasan, you emphasized it. It's about personal stories, that we can share the stories of individuals and communities affected by the crisis, and to humanize also in some sort the issue and make it relatable to our donors. But in the same time, when personalizing stories, we can also highlight the resilience, the strengths, aspirations we can of individual person, and then we can close to that what you say, Savannah. Yes, actually, what do we mean with dignity? And one thing which seems to, for me, to be really important is to invest also in providing context, that we offer resources and context to help our donors to understand the root causes, complexities, and also systemic issues underlying humanitarian crisis. And so there's also a moment of empowering them to become informed advocates for sustainable solution. And a fourth point maybe is also the investment in narratives that show long-term solutions, and that refers again to the time. It's not appropriate just to step in, take pictures, and make fundraising, but I think it's more efficient, and it's a task for the organizations really to follow the stories, also to follow the people portrayed in a crisis, and to tell the whole story. And that takes, again, that needs time, again, that needs investment in storytelling. And I think by creating relevance with compelling visual communications, organizations can not only raise funds in the short term, but also build really an engaged community of donors committed to sustainable solutions and long-term change. And with a storytelling that takes into account that we do not have objects that the victims are not only objects, then we bring in also another view, maybe to that humanity or the dignity of people living in difficult situations.
Thanks so much, Jörg. Need to be a bit speedy here. So I'd like to go to the Q&A and just open up the floor for general discussion. Firstly, if you'd like to hear more from Savannah, she's delivering a workshop next Monday on the ethics of picturing tragedy and trauma. It's hosted by Fairpicture and it will be running from 1:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. Central European time. So you can find more information about that on the Fairpicture website. If you've got a question, please put it in the chat box or direct it to one of the panelists specifically. There's a few really good questions here. I might start with this one. Maybe for you, Hasan. So can dignity also mean sharing the pictures you took of the communities with them afterwards and how they were used, sort of like closing the feedback loop? So for example, you may show a publication of where the image was used. Did we just lose him? Have we lost him?
Yes, it looks like he said his internet sometimes is unstable.
Yeah.
So ask the question to someone else. Hope he's coming back.
I might wait till he logs back in. Okay, here's one. With the General Data Protection Regulation giving individuals the right to withdraw permission at a later date, what advice can you give in terms of how to practically do this? Maybe for you, Savannah?
I was actually
and-
thinking it might be a good question for Jörg because I know that Fairpicture did that white paper on data protection, so I thought it might be a good one for you. I'd like to take this.
Yeah.
I have a response to the second half of the question though.
Okay.
That I just put in there, so you can come back to me.
Great.
Okay, well, very shortly, it's difficult. Yes, it's the GDPR demands that everybody who gave a consent can withdraw it. And I think it's we work on the technical solution with to connect with the people photographed, and we must say we have the technical infrastructure to do it, because as you experience it also in the field work, most of the people nowadays worldwide, globally, they have access to maybe not a smartphone, but to a mobile phone, and we can communicate with it. And so we have got to take take it serious that we have communication possibilities to the people photographed, direct possibilities to directly communicate with them. And it's not too easy to organize it, and it's not too easy really to put it in a systematic process. But actually we are also forced to do it. Yes, we have got to develop those possibilities that everybody in Europe, he or she, when getting a service, can send a stop SMS to the provider. And why should a person depicted in Southern Sudan not be able to do the same thing? And I think we're working on the technical issues that this will be possible. But then we have got also to accept that when people are doing it, when people are withdrawing their consent, that we accept it. That's another question, whether we do it or not. Savannah.
Thank you so much, Jörg. Yes, I'll hand over the second part of the question to you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much. And I just wanted to follow up a little bit on what Jörg said there. I think that's a really good point, that we do have the technical capability. I was just re-listening to an interview that I did with Danielle Viasana for the Photo Ethics podcast a few years ago. And something that she said in there is really relevant about how, if we want to do something, we make it happen. When there's a will, there's a way. We do have the ability to keep track of these things. And it's a choice about where we put our, intentions and where we put our focus and what we spend time, on. So I just thought that came to mind as you were speaking. But yes, to the second point of Margaret's question about, how do we tell, or how do we think about informed consent, first of all, but also how do we ensure that people who maybe don't have regular access to the internet or to Facebook, for example, how do we communicate to ensure that we have informed consent? And I think that's a great question. It's a question I get a lot, and I think it really the onus is on us, right? As the people communicating for informed consent, to make sure that we are expressing this in a way that's understandable. So people don't necessarily need to have used Facebook or Instagram to understand that, your image is going to be put online, which means that people all over the world will have access to it. And it could be viewed by X number of people. You can cite your followers, you can cite your website, the number of hits you have on your website, to give them some sense of the possible reach of an image. Another great way to do it is you can print off screenshots so people can see how it might be contextualized in an online environment. So I think that there are lots of ways that we, it's not about them understanding all of the different platforms necessarily, if that doesn't mean anything to them. If that is something that they use, then that's a great, way of ensuring that they understand the possible reach. But if those aren't things that the people that we're talking with or that we're working with are using every day, how do we drill it down to sort of the core? What does that actually mean to go on Facebook? So it's maybe rethinking how we're articulating this and how we're thinking about this, so that it's accessible to people who have a very different, we're operating in a context of media imbalance, right? So thinking about how do we bridge that? And, I definitely think that the onus is on us to make sure that we're expressing that in an understandable way. And I guess just to sort of backtrack and just say about the first part of the question about informed consent, ensuring that we have informed consent is all about making sure that people understand why we're photographing them, for what purpose or how it's going to be used, where it's going to go, for how long, who's going to see it. But really core to informed consent is also making sure that they understand that they don't have to say yes. Just because they might be receiving some sort of benefit from the organization that maybe you're hired to photograph for, that does not just entitle us to their stories, right? We need to be sure that people have an opportunity to say no, that it is consent is willingly given and not coerced.
That's great. Thank you. Is Hasan back, or did we lose him again?
Looks like we lost him again.
Sorry, I talked too long.
No, he'll be back. Jörg, I might direct this question to you. So when you say that nonprofits should invest in storytelling, besides time, what else do nonprofits need to invest?
To be honest, I do not understand the question correctly. I think besides time. So yes, I think investing is in relationship. That's something which is really really important, and that touches also Shagufta's question when it comes to double standards or white gaze. and she compares the Ukrainian crisis with non-European crisis, how the fundraising and the imagery was completely different in this crisis. And I think something which is very specific in the Ukrainian crisis is that lots of organizations, they have strong direct relationship to organizations, to partners in the field, and those relationships are very close. And I think that's really important to get a common understanding of what is possible and what is not possible, and to accept also the what a partner organization in the global South is saying about possibilities and constraints, restrictions. And I think it's besides time, it's investing in a relationship, and besides time, I think also what you said, Savannah, what we're working on is to really to establish also a network of local photographers and videographers who are in the context already, who know the context, who know the languages, and who have another access to the affected communities than Western photographers stepping in or parachuting in. I think that's also something we have got to develop, and it's I think it's an investment. It's a change of processes also in producing visual contents, and I think we have got to work on it. There are lots of organizations who try it, who are willing to do it. But I think it's very important really to go into action, and to build also, to invest also in those networks and in the common understanding.
Great, thank you, Jörg. If there's any more questions, we've probably got time for one or two more. If you'd like to drop them in the chat box. I think we've lost Hasan again, haven't we? Okay, never mind. Jörg, do you want to speak to this question about how to close feedback loop? Can dignity also mean sharing the pictures that you took of the communities with them afterwards?
Yes, sure, definitely, and that's what you said also already said, Savannah. I think it's I think we have the opportunities, we have the technical infrastructure to show the people the photograph themselves. We can give them access to the data. We can show them the pictures, and we can give them also, if we once have the link to them, with their mobile phone or by email or however, and or by the partner organization, they have the access to all the material we produce. And I think we can close this loop by simply do it, and simply make this effort really to, and that's an investment too in relationship, really to go back and show the people what was produced out of the pictures, and show them, give them access to the picture themselves, so they can also, after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 month, that they can make themselves or consider whether they still for example, still want to give their consent or not.
Thanks,
Savannah.
Jörg. Yeah, there's.
Go ahead.
No. You go, Savannah. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I was thinking a little bit more as well about Diana's question about investment. I think that, that idea of investment and investing in storytelling, I think, has come up a lot in today's talk. And something came to mind as well while Jörg was speaking about how I think a lot of times I've heard this narrative about, well, we've done fundraising or we've done storytelling in NGOs a certain way. And maybe the onus isn't on us. Maybe we're too small and another organization should take the initiative. And I think investment can also look like just taking the initiative to change the way it's done and to rethink. And an investment, of course, time involves a lot of finance, but also putting money into ethical processes, I think is just, it can't be overstated, the importance of actually, ring fencing time, ring fencing money, ring fencing thought processes to really cultivating a robust process within organizations. I don't know if that adds anything, but I just wanted to sort of flag that.
That's great. Thank you. I've got one last question. I'll ask you, Savannah. I think this is quite interesting. So Tamara says, we have projects in Bangladesh where people don't tend to smile for photographs. Is it unethical to ask them to do so?
I think I don't use language. I don't choose to use language of ethical and unethical, first of all. I don't think that that's I don't think that that's what inspires the best conversations. I think that we can sort of simplify these conversations and say this is ethical, this is unethical, and I think that a lot of times there's a lot of nuance in it. So I'm not going to come down hard on one side or the other. I think there's a lot of thinking that could definitely be done around that, about what's appropriate culturally in a context, what's appropriate for the way that images are being contextualized. Is a smiling image appropriate for the where the photograph is going? I'm kind of hedging around that, just because I think that there's a lot that we could unpack there, which I think warrants maybe more time and conversation. I mean, I think also the person who is in that situation will have a better sense as well of what the relationships are like and how that's being negotiated. So yeah, does that make sense?
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'll just do a quick wrap up. There's some really great questions, and I'm sorry we sort of have to cut it. But we do have a group on LinkedIn called Ethical Communication and Storytelling. It's not a Fairpicture branded group. It's just a group that's open. It's a neutral space for practitioners or anybody interested in ethical communication and storytelling to really share their experiences, ask questions, share tools and resources. So I'd like to encourage you to maybe join that group and drop some of these questions in there so that we can continue to answer them. Just in closing, Fairpicture's released an app, which was another question. Is the Fair Consent app available and can it be used by everyone? Yes, we just released the first version of our app, and it works to support the gathering of informed consent. It's currently available in 20 different languages. And it's really user-friendly in that the protagonists are easily able to provide their consent depending on their literacy levels, or not depending on their literacy levels, rather. So we're currently looking for feedback on that version, and it'd be really great if you could download the app, test it, let us know what you think, use it in the field on your own projects, and really contribute to its development and improvement of a second version. We can't build it without input of people in the field actually using it. So we'd be really super grateful if you can support us with that. And that's really it. Thank you everybody for being here. It was amazing how many people logged in today. We really look forward to having you at our next Fair Talk, which will be in another 2 months. We don't have a date yet, but we'll send out an invitation and advertise it on all the usual channels. And that's it. Have a lovely evening, everybody. And thank you once again for your commitment to ethical storytelling practices and for joining us in this. That's it.